It was nearly dusk when Vanessa Clayborne stepped through the glass doors of the Oakmark Grand Hotel in downtown Des Moines, Iowa. She wasn't dressed to impress, no red carpet entrance, no entourage trailing behind, just a soft pair of loafers, tailored slacks, and a blue silk blouse worn like a second skin. Her hair was pulled into a neat puff, and a simple canvas duffel hung from her shoulder. She hadn't come to make a scene. All she wanted was a quiet night's rest before a board meeting she hadn't even planned to attend in person. But from the moment she entered the lobby, all marble floors, gold lighting, and polite murmurs, she could tell something was off. Behind the front desk, a young receptionist tapped acrylic nails against a keyboard and offered Vanessa a well-practiced smile. Checking in, Vanessa nodded, always courteous. Yes, under Clayborne Vanessa. There was a pause. The typing stopped. I don't see a reservation under that name. That's all right, Vanessa said softly. There should be a suite reserved. It's always held for me. The girl's tone shifted, firmer now. We're at full capacity tonight, ma'am. For guests only, I'm afraid you'll need a confirmed booking. Vanessa didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice. She simply glanced past the desk to the polished plaque hanging behind it. Oakmark Grand, a Clayborne property. I am a guest, she said quietly. And more than that, I own this hotel. The girl blinked, then let out a short, doubtful breath. You own the Oakmark. Vanessa gave a single calm nod. I'm going to have to call the manager. Go ahead. Across the lobby, a couple in golf polos turned their heads. A man near the fireplace looked up. Vanessa felt it then, that familiar shift in the room, that silent weight of being doubted. Moments later, a lanky man in a crooked tie emerged with a clipboard. Neil Dorrance, his badge read. There a problem with your reservation? He asked cheerfully. She says she owns the hotel, the receptionist added too loud. Vanessa didn't blink. I don't say it, I do. My name is Vanessa Clayborne. You'll find it on every board memo and ownership document tied to this place. Neil hesitated, already reaching for his walkie. Security appeared minutes later. Not hostile, not close, just near enough to remind her what they were thinking. That maybe she was making trouble. That maybe she didn't belong. Vanessa stood quietly near a marble pillar, phone in hand. No shouting, no scene, just one call 30 seconds long. I've been denied access to my own property, she said calmly. Please resolve this. Then she waited, because deep down Vanessa knew this wasn't just about a room. It never was. The minutes passed slowly in the lobby of the Oakmark Grand, the air heavy with something unspoken. Vanessa Clayborne stood near the marble pillar still and composed her phone, now quiet in her hand. She didn't move, didn't fidget. Across the room, eyes glanced her way, some out of curiosity, others with suspicion. She could feel them wondering, who does she think she is? She didn't need to wonder. She already knew exactly who she was. Behind the front desk, the receptionist, Kayla. Her name tag read, kept typing as if maybe, just maybe, the computer screen would change its mind. Neil, the assistant manager, had disappeared to the back, folder in hand, muttering something into his walkie-talkie. Security hadn't stepped any closer, but they stayed where they were, present, watching. Vanessa wasn't surprised, not anymore. She remembered another time years ago in a different city, a different lobby. She was 28, newly promoted to VP. She wore heels too tight and a suit that didn't quite fit. Security had followed her then too, just in case. The only thing that saved her that night was the CFO coming down in person. She never forgot how that felt. And now 2 decades later, here she was again explaining herself inside a building that bore her name. Then the elevator dinged. 2 men stepped out, moving quickly with purpose. One in a tailored gray suit, clipboard in hand, the other in a navy fleece with the company's logo. They didn't stop to ask questions. They already knew. Brent Kessler, Regional Vice President. Carlos Reno, District Manager. Vanessa recognized them instantly, and from the way their faces changed, they recognized her too. Miss Clayborne, Brent said, his voice low and urgent. We are so sorry, I just got the call. Carlos followed close behind, slightly out of breath. We're taking care of this right now. Neil stepped forward, stammering something halfway between an apology and an excuse, but Brent stopped him with a look. Kayla froze eyes wide, suddenly understanding what she had done, not just who Vanessa was, but who she had dismissed. Suite 1202 is being prepared, Carlos said, tapping on a tablet. Your driver's being rerouted, and your usual fruit tray and espresso will be waiting upstairs. Vanessa gave a small, measured smile. Thank you, she said. Her voice was even, not cold, but it held something firm beneath the surface. She was watching now, not for a show, but for truth, for the way people shift when power walks in, wearing a face they didn't expect. She stepped forward, placing her phone on the counter. I'll take the 12th floor suite, she said calmly. Same setup. Please have someone confirm it's clean. Kayla opened her mouth but couldn't speak. Brent answered instead, flipping through his clipboard. You've been checked in. 2 key cards are ready, and we'll have a formal incident report filed before you reach the elevator. Vanessa nodded once. And the rest? Carlos glanced at Brent, who answered smoothly. Site-wide notification has been issued. Corporate audit is on standby. All current staff will undergo immediate recertification. Disciplinary reviews begin tonight. Vanessa turned to Kayla. You'll speak to her, she said plainly. Brent cleared his throat. Yes, ma'am, privately, with HR present. Carlos looked like he wanted to add something, but Vanessa held up a hand. I'll speak with her too, just not tonight. She accepted the key cards and turned toward the elevator. Heads turned with her. Guests whispered quietly, trying not to be obvious, though none of them said a word aloud. They didn't need to. The truth was out, and now they were reckoning with it. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Vanessa caught a final glimpse of Neil standing by the desk, shoulders tight, sweat beginning to collect at his collar. No one was making eye contact now. Upstairs, her suite smelled faintly of lemon and eucalyptus. The fruit tray was waiting along with fresh espresso pods and a handwritten welcome card. It had clearly been rushed, but it was there. She moved slowly through the space, taking it in, not just for tidiness, but for intention, for care. This wasn't just a hotel room. It was a symbol of everything she had built and everything she still had to fight for, even here. Even now, her phone buzzed. A message from her assistant. Everything in motion. Let me know if you want a media statement. Vanessa stared at the screen. One message, one headline. That was all it would take to make this go viral. She could have dragged the whole incident into the public spotlight, and no one would have blamed her. But she wasn't after rage. She didn't need revenge. What she wanted was respect. Quiet, lasting respect. The kind that didn't rely on press coverage or public shaming to exist. There was a knock at the door. Room service came a young man's voice. She opened the door to find a tray with a fresh espresso, a note from the kitchen manager, and an offer for an in-room massage on the house. Vanessa accepted it all with a soft thank you and closed the door gently behind her. She sat on the edge of the bed and took a slow sip. The city lights shimmered beyond the window traffic, still humming along Grand Avenue. Somewhere in the distance, a freight train sounded its horn. But inside her suite, everything was still. Vanessa felt a shift deep in her chest. Something was changing, not just in this hotel and her. She wasn't sure what came next, but she knew it would start now. At exactly 6:30 the next morning, Vanessa Clayborne stepped out of the elevator into the polished marble floor of the Oakmark Grand's lobby, not as a guest, but as the woman who signed the paychecks. She was dressed in a deep charcoal suit, crisp ivory blouse, and a pair of modest heels that echoed gently as she walked past the front desk. Conversations hushed. Even the barista behind the coffee cart paused mid-pour. Brent and Carlos were already waiting by the fireplace, each holding a folder, 2 untouched cups of coffee beside them. They looked like men who hadn't slept. Vanessa nodded once, calm and steady, and made her way past the concierge to the small executive conference room, tucked quietly off to the side. Carlos opened the door without a word. Brent followed her in. Inside, seated stiffly at the long table, were assistant manager Neil Dorrance, the receptionist Kayla Mendez, and a woman from HR who introduced herself simply as Marta from corporate. Her notepad was already open. Vanessa didn't sit. She remained standing at the head of the table, arms folded. No one spoke. The silence stretched dense and heavy until finally, in a voice both quiet and certain, she asked, "Would someone like to explain what happened last night?" From your perspective, Kayla looked down instantly. Neil cleared his throat but said nothing. His hands fidgeted with the pen in front of him, but his eyes stayed fixed on the table. Vanessa waited. Eventually, Kayla mumbled, "I just didn't think. I didn't expect." Vanessa tilted her head gently, prompting. "You didn't expect someone like me to own this building?" she said, her tone still even. Kayla nodded faintly, eyes glassy. "I didn't mean to be rude. Was I rude to you?" Vanessa asked. Kayla shook her head. "No, ma'am. Did I raise my voice? Threaten anyone?" "No." Vanessa drew a slow breath and turned slightly to Marta. "I don't need this to be a firing squad," she said gently. "But I do need accountability." Marta nodded, understood. Carlos spoke next. "We're issuing a formal write-up and removing Kayla from the front desk rotation until she's completed recertification. Neil will be placed on administrative review pending further interviews." Vanessa nodded once and finally took a seat. She looked directly at Kayla. "How long have you worked here?" "4 months. And in that time," Vanessa asked, "how often have you thought about who built this hotel, where it came from?" Kayla hesitated. I just assumed it was some big company, a group of investors or something." Vanessa let the moment settle before replying. "I've built 17 properties," she said quietly. "From Baltimore to Phoenix, every one of them designed with care, luxury made accessible, service made human. I started this brand because I was tired of being treated like I didn't belong, even in places I helped build." She paused, her voice steady. "So tell me, why is it that when I walked into my own lobby last night, I was invisible?" The room was silent, not the kind of silence that begs to be filled, the kind that holds truth. Kayla looked like she wanted to disappear. Neil still hadn't looked up. Carlos cleared his throat. "We've drafted a memo. Mandatory inclusivity training for every Claiborne property, no exceptions. A reset." Vanessa looked at him. "Make sure it's not just another box to check. I'm not interested in scripts. I want people to understand what respect looks like when no one's watching." Brent nodded. "We'll make it real." Vanessa stood again. The meeting was over. As she stepped into the lobby, she didn't scan for reactions. She wasn't looking for whispered apologies or nervous glances. Not yet. She wasn't after performance. She was watching for change. And that kind of shift takes more than one uncomfortable morning meeting. It takes intention. It takes people willing to see beyond what they've been told to expect. She knew that wouldn't happen overnight, but it would start here, with this, with her. Later that morning, after the lobby's early bustle had quieted and the breakfast rush had faded to a murmur, Vanessa Clayborne made her way quietly past the coffee bar and into the staff lounge. She hadn't sent anyone ahead. No formal summons. She simply walked in herself the same way she had walked into the hotel the night before. Inside, Kayla Mendez sat alone at a narrow table, a half-eaten blueberry muffin resting on a napkin in front of her. Her phone lay face down. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from lack of sleep, the kind that comes from knowing you've disappointed someone, maybe even yourself. She startled when she saw Vanessa. "Relax," Vanessa said softly, pulling out the chair across from her. "I just want to talk." Kayla sat up straighter, nearly knocking over her drink. "Yes, ma'am." Vanessa held up a hand. "Drop the ma'am. This isn't a hearing." Kayla nodded, eyes down. For a long moment, the only sounds in the room were the low hum of the refrigerator and the overhead lights. Then gently, Vanessa asked, "Have you ever worked somewhere that made you feel small?" Kayla blinked, looked up slowly. "Yeah," she said. "Most of the time, honestly." "Tell me," Vanessa said. Kayla hesitated, but then her shoulders dropped a little. I worked at this little diner off I-80. Paper hat, polyester apron, the whole thing. Cooks yelled at us every night, no breaks, no thanks. Customers called me kid. I was 27. I felt invisible. Vanessa leaned back, hands resting in her lap. So you know what that feels like, being overlooked, brushed aside? Kayla nodded. Yes. Then help me understand, Vanessa said quietly, how you looked me in the eye last night and decided I didn't belong here. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of shame, of realization of all the things Kayla had likely never said aloud, even to herself. I don't know, Kayla whispered. I didn't mean to. I guess when you walked in, I thought maybe you were lost or waiting for someone. Vanessa's voice didn't change. And what made you think that? Kayla swallowed hard. You just didn't look like, she trailed off. Didn't look like what Vanessa asked softly. Kayla didn't answer. That's the real problem, Vanessa said more to the room than to the girl across from her. People carry these pictures in their heads of what leadership looks like, what success looks like. And most of the time, that picture doesn't look like me. She paused. It's not just in your head, Kayla. It's in your actions. It's in the hesitation, the doubt, the subtle things, and they add up. I'm sorry, Kayla said, her voice barely above a whisper. I really am. I know that's not enough, but I mean it. Vanessa nodded slowly. It's a start, but I didn't come here for an apology. Kayla looked confused. Then, why I came, because I wanted you to see me. Not as your boss, not as a symbol, as a person. Kayla stared at her, listening. I was you once, Vanessa continued. I started as a receptionist just like you. People thought I was the janitor or assumed I was lost. I got called sweetheart and honey by guests who couldn't imagine I was the one holding everything together. She smiled faintly. First job was in St. Paul. My boss told me I sounded too educated for the phones and moved me to night audit. That was the beginning. Kayla blinked, surprised. That's unreal. It shouldn't be, Vanessa said. It should be normal. She stood, smoothing the front of her blazer. I don't need you to be perfect, Kayla. I just need you to pay attention. Every guest who walks through that door, old, young, dressed up, or not, they all deserve dignity. You start there and you won't have to recover from mistakes like last night. Kayla stood too. Thank you, she said. For talking to me. I mean that. Vanessa nodded once and turned to leave. As she stepped back out into the hallway, something in her chest felt lighter. Not because everything was fixed, but because for the first time in a long time, it felt like something had truly landed. Not in a policy or a memo, in a person. That was where change always began. By mid-morning, the rhythm of the Oakmark Grand had returned, at least on the surface. Guests rolled suitcases across the tile floors, children tugged on parents' hands near the breakfast bar, and espresso cups clinked softly against saucers. To the casual eye, the hotel looked just as it always had, polished, efficient, calm. But inside the management office, it was anything but ordinary. Brent stood by the window, arms folded, watching the valet team outside rotate a stream of black sedans and town cars. Carlos typed steadily at his laptop, brow furrowed, drafting the official internal memo. Marta, the HR lead from corporate, reviewed onboarding materials with sharp focus, making notes in the margins like a teacher grading exams. And at the center of it all sat Vanessa Clayborne, her posture steady, her presence unmistakable, quietly flipping through a stack of printed evaluations. Each one held names, dates, notes. Personnel flagged for further review. She wasn't reading for mistakes, she was reading for patterns. I'm not here to punish, she said, eyes still on the page. I'm here to prevent repetition. Carlos glanced up. We're making adjustments to the interview process for all front desk hires, not just for technical skill, but for empathy, bias testing, pattern recognition, real evaluations. Vanessa nodded. Good. She tapped her pen once against the desk and looked up. and put me on the rotation next quarter. Brent turned from the window. Rotation. I wanted to start visiting properties. Randomly. Quietly. Just like I did here. Carlos raised an eyebrow. You want to go undercover? Not undercover, Vanessa said. Just unannounced. Anonymous. Until I'm not. Carlos let out a low chuckle. That's gonna make a few people nervous. Good, Vanessa replied. Let them sit in it. The real version of this job doesn't come with a warning. She gathered the papers and placed them neatly into a folder. Have the new training go live by next Friday, she said. Include story modules. I want staff reading real experiences from guests, not polished scripts or hypothetical situations. I want them hearing human voices. Brent nodded slowly. Consider it done. Vanessa stood and walked toward the door. Just before leaving, she paused. They need to understand, she said quietly, what it feels like to be dismissed so they never let it happen again. Back in the lobby, the atmosphere remained calm, but something had shifted. A new front desk agent had taken over the morning shift, a tall young man with kind eyes and a steady, respectful smile. He greeted Vanessa with quiet recognition, not fanfare, not performance. Just the kind of acknowledgement that said, I see you. Vanessa returned the nod and kept walking. She glanced around the space, the marble, the chandeliers, the subtle scent of citrus in the air, and felt something move beneath it all. A soft cracking, like the earliest signs of spring beneath a hard winter frost. Not loud, but real. That's how change starts. Not with press releases or policy updates, but with quiet corrections repeated until they stick. She moved toward the elevator, back to her suite, back to her bag still resting near the window. There was time before her flight, and time she thought was exactly what some people needed to grow if they were truly willing. When the elevator doors opened onto the 12th floor, everything was still. The soft scent of fresh linen hung in the hallway, faint notes of lemon trailing behind a housekeeping cart left neatly down the corridor. Vanessa stepped out, heels cushioned by the thick carpet, moving with quiet purpose back to her suite. The door stood slightly ajar. Housekeeping had just finished. Inside, everything was in place. Her suitcase had been packed and zipped. Her laptop rested on the desk charger, coiled beside it like a ribbon. The espresso machine had been wiped clean, the fruit tray refreshed. Everything was orderly, except one thing. A folded sheet of lined notepad paper sat on the nightstand just beneath the reading lamp. No envelope, no logo, just pen on paper, simple and careful. Vanessa opened it. Miss Clayborne, thank you for your grace. I'll be better. Kayla. That was all it said. No excuses, no signatures from a PR team. Just a note, written by hand, meant to be found quietly. Vanessa stood there for a moment, the paper resting in her hands. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was real. And in a world where most apologies came polished and rehearsed, that kind of honesty was rare. She folded the note once and slipped it gently into her purse. Downstairs, a black car waited just outside the main entrance. The doorman, the same one from the night before, stood tall, ready. As Vanessa approached, he opened the door with purpose and warmth. Safe travels, Miss Clayborne, he said. We hope to see you again soon. She smiled softly. You will. The ride to the airport was quiet. No small talk from the driver, no music playing through the speakers, just the faint hum of tires on pavement and the soft blink of the turn signal when they changed lanes. Vanessa sat in the back seat, one hand resting on her purse, the other gently holding the folded note. She didn't reread it. She didn't need to. It was a reminder not of what happened, but of what could happen when someone was willing to face the truth and move forward. Out the window, she watched the city pass by rows of old brick buildings, corner gas stations, weathered signs for mechanics and bakeries. This wasn't where she was supposed to be this week, not on paper. She hadn't planned to show up in Des Moines, but maybe she was meant to be here after all. Not for a board meeting, not for a business review, for a conversation, for a shift because the truth was none of this surprised her anymore. She wasn't angry that it happened. She was tired that it kept happening. Tired of worth being measured by assumptions. Tired of people sorting others into boxes before asking a single question. Tired of having to prove again and again that she deserved to be where she stood. But she wasn't bitter. That's what people always got wrong about her. Vanessa didn't carry bitterness. She carried memory, and memory when held right could be powerful. The airport signs came into view, and her thoughts drifted to a younger version of herself, the girl working night shifts in cheap flats, in a blazer that didn't quite fit. The one with calloused feet and tired eyes. No title, no recognition, just grit. That girl believed she could build something no one could take from her, and she had. But buildings weren't enough. Not really, because even with 17 properties and a team of executives, people still looked at her and saw something less. So what do you do when the world refuses to see you? You see yourself clearly and you walk in anyway. You hold your ground, you speak plainly, and you never ask permission to belong. The car came to a smooth stop at the terminal. Vanessa stepped out, grabbed her bag, and gave the driver a nod. No more words were needed. Inside the airport buzzed with the usual rhythm voices over intercoms, wheels of suitcases, rolling over tile people moving quickly with half-full coffee cups. Vanessa moved quietly among them, almost invisible again. And yet inside her chest, something had settled. Because this time she hadn't just walked through discomfort, she'd turned it into a mirror. One the staff at Oakmark Grand couldn't look away from. And mirrors don't lie. They show us who we really are. She hoped Kayla would grow. She hoped Neil would learn. She hoped Brent and Carlos would keep their promises. But even if they didn't, Vanessa would still be standing. She always had been, because dignity, real dignity, isn't something anyone gives you. It's something you never give up. Vanessa Clayborne moved through the airport with the same quiet steadiness she carried into every boardroom, every construction site, every hotel she ever built. She didn't rush, didn't need to. In her purse, tucked between her notebook and a folded itinerary, was Kayla's handwritten note. Just 12 words. No branding, no polish. But it meant more than any formal apology ever could. It reminded her that change doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it arrives in the hush after discomfort when someone chooses to face what they'd rather ignore. Sometimes it takes the shape of a conversation, a pause, a promise to do better. She found a seat near the gate and watched travelers pass by, parents guiding small children, seniors wheeling carry-ons, a young man in a suit mumbling into his phone. All of them moving, carrying something unseen, like she was. She thought again of the night before, of standing still in her own hotel being doubted, and of the moment the room shifted, not because she yelled, but because she knew who she was. That's what it came down to. Not proving it, just holding it. What Vanessa taught and lived was that dignity doesn't come from how others treat you. It comes from how you carry yourself when they don't. She didn't walk in demanding recognition. She walked in standing whole. And when others failed to see her worth, she didn't shatter. She stood firmer, calm, clear, unmoved. And in doing so, she held up a mirror, not to punish, but to reveal. Because the goal isn't to make others small, it's to help them see. And once they do, really do, that's where growth begins. If this story moved you even just a little, I'd love to hear what it stirred in your heart. Maybe it reminded you of a time you were unseen, or a time you saw someone else with new eyes. Feel free to share your thoughts, your own experiences, or simply what you're carrying today. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, real human and quietly powerful, you're warmly invited to subscribe. I promise to keep telling them with the same care, because stories like Vanessa's aren't rare. They're just too often unheard. Let's change that. Oh.